Because Uganda, even if you wanted to build a navy, how can you build it? We don't have access to the sea.
I give Kenya 8 hours to surrender the Indian Ocean to Uganda.
In the ocean, we already have people who are harvesting our resources. We already have huge ships harvesting our resources. We have general here going to protect the ocean.
Hello everyone, welcome to Auntie Annie channel. How are you doing? Today we are going to talk about President Museveni of Uganda threats about Indian Ocean which belongs to Kenya. Are they fighting for? I don't think Kenya is fighting Uganda, but it's the other side. President Museveni is threatening war with Kenya if Uganda doesn't have access to the Indian Ocean. Uganda already performed military drills days before Ugandan President Museveni the threat. He stated that Uganda is entitled to Kenyan Indian Ocean. Let's listen to the speech by President Museveni, and later we'll play more videos about this issue. What are Ugandans saying? What is it all about? And what are Kenyan saying about all this issue? Are we looking forward to the war between Kenya and Uganda? Do you think Africa is looking forward to that? I don't think so. Let's listen and listen carefully.
But that ocean belongs to me. Because where is my ocean? I am entitled to that ocean. In future, we are going to have wars. In the future, we are going to have wars. How can you say that you are in a block of flats, that the compound belongs to only the flats on the ground floor, that the compound belongs to the whole block. All the flats are entitled to the compound.
Yeah.
There's no way you can say. So may I just watch these people? You are really endangering yourself. How can you have a situation like this? Uganda is landlocked inside here. But where is my ocean? My ocean is the Indian Ocean. So, no, it belongs, really, me. I'm on the top floor of the block. And then you say the compound belongs only the ones on the ground floor. This is madness. So that's why I say, you people, you better unite economically for the sake of prosperity, if you want prosperity.
In the ocean, we already have people who are harvesting our resources. We already have huge ships harvesting our resources. We have general here going to protect the ocean. How can we protect the ocean so that other people can harvest our resources? Surely. We must build our own capacity, and we must create the partnership between government of Kenya, all the departments involved, the private sector, so that we can unlock the potential that exists in our blue economy, in the ocean resources that we have.
Museveni should remember that Kenya has got the smallest portion of Lake Victoria, and that our fishermen are constantly arrested and harassed by Uganda's security agents. He should also remember that what is good for the goose should also be good for the gander. And I want to remind him also that he should not overstep. He should not overstep diplomatic boundaries. He cannot, I emphasize, win a military war against the combined military forces of Kenya and Tanzania. Because when he talks about the Indian Ocean, I believe, yes, it means Kenya and Tanzania, because some of his goods pass through Tanzania and Kenya. Idi Amin Dada, in 1979, tried to annex the Kagera region of Tanzania. The Tanzanian military, led by General David Bugozi Museveni, and the battle-hardened tactician, Brigadier Mike Mwita Marwa, led the Tanzanian forces. They humiliated the Uganda army and chased Amin out of Uganda. Some of the people who were in the Kagera campaign, the Kagera operation, are still alive. And I have in mind Lieutenant Colonel Jakaya Kikwete, who is now retired as a former president of Tanzania. He should be laughing at Museveni, wherever he is. I was personally present at Kololo when Museveni awarded General Museveni and Brigadier Mike Mwita Marwa the highest medal in Uganda. Is called the Nanubale Award, because of chasing out Amin. Because Museveni benefited from Amin's defeat. That is why he later became the president. Nanubale Award. It was Mr. Daniel Arap Moi, our late president, who helped Museveni to diplomatically and politically snooker Ugandan leader, General Tito Okello Lutwa, during the 1985 Uganda peace talks. He should not play with fire. He should choose the peaceful way. In fact, I was one of the people who were looking after Museveni when he was weak in Nairobi. He used to use my office to contact his brother Salim Saleh in the Luero Triangle. My office was his command post. Museveni should remember people like Akina Sergeant Sugut. We used to give him even our own security people so that we could escort him by Kenya Air Force, Buffalo planes, so that he could access the Luero Triangle through Rwanda. We helped him. So how can he threaten people who put him in power? There are some people who are more eloquent than him during the Uganda peace talks. People like Brigadier Gand Wilson Toko, who was at one time the commander of the Uganda Air Force. And you should also remember the eloquence of a former foreign minister in Uganda, Olara Otunu. We helped him. Even Nyerere loved Museveni so much that even he wrote the foreword to his book, The Must and Seed. Museveni has got so much to thank Kenya for and to thank Tanzania for. We do not deserve this kind of threat.
In your view, could such statements strain the long-standing diplomatic and trade relations between Kenya and Uganda?
Yes, they could. Because unless he tells us that he was joking, we shall take him seriously. And you know, Museveni is known for his use of force. He stormed into Kampala in 1986 through the barrel of the gun. So, based on his past, which is very well documented, we have reason to fear. Now, when we see Ugandans here, who are too many in Kenya. And here in Nakuru, there are so many Ugandans doing business here. They are hawkers. They are working in the bars, in the restaurants. When we see them, we might start to see enemies because of the utterances of their leader. Because Museveni talks for Uganda. He is the leader. So what he says should be taken seriously. You remember even when he came to power, we almost went to war. Yeah, until we had to reconcile at Amagoro during the Moi administration.
Do you believe Uganda's grievances over oil pipeline routes and port access are legitimate economic concerns, or are they politically driven?
As I said, these things can be resolved through dialogue. They are legitimate, but you cannot resolve these things by force of arms. They should negotiate. They do not need an interpreter. Museveni speaks Swahili. Suluhu speaks Swahili. Ruto speaks Swahili. They all speak English. If they cannot understand.
Back to President Museveni's remarks. Other than fridges, the Ugandan president said something else that is worth noting. Museveni said that, and I quote, "The Indian Ocean is mine." Now, geographically, this of course does not make sense, as Uganda is a landlocked nation that only has access to the Indian Ocean by land through Kenya and maybe northern Tanzania. But the Ugandan president is saying, and I quote again, "That ocean belongs to me." He continues, "I'm entitled to that ocean." And then he deadpanned with a warning, and I quote, "In future, we may have wars."
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has downplayed threats of war issued by Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni over access to the port of Mombasa and the Indian Ocean, insisting Museveni is well aware of international territorial laws. But experts warn that his remarks, including a claim that he, quote, owns the Indian Ocean through Kenyan transit, risk straining bilateral relations and the cohesion of the East African community.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni is seeking another mandate come January 2026. Museveni is eyeing his 8th consecutive term since seizing power in 1986.
Come and you stand around here, I don't have the strength to go and stand there.
It is against this backdrop that the former rebel leader has had tongue-wagging remarks touching on Kenya-Uganda relations and the right to access the Indian Ocean when he was unpacking his manifesto during the weekend.
The political organization in Africa is so irrational. Some of the countries have no access to the sea. For economic purposes, but also for defense purposes, you are stuck. How do I export my products? That's why we have got endless discussion with Kenya, then this one stops, then another one comes, then the railway, the pipeline, the what, we discuss. But that ocean belongs to me. Because where is my ocean? I'm entitled to that ocean. In future, we are going to have wars.
Again, the timing of his remarks, you know, at this time, there are heated campaigns in Uganda. He is seeking for a re-election, which he calls his last term. And could it be that he's speaking to the Ugandans' ears what they want to hear?
The Kenyan government has responded to Museveni through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
I will not comment much on what His Excellency President Museveni said with respect to our oceans, but I believe very much that he does have a fairly great understanding with respect to the nature of our territory and the nature of our rights with respect to our natural resources, and his right with respect to natural resources within Ugandan territory.
For the President of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, to come out at this particular time to specifically hint of a looming war between Uganda and Kenya, to reclaim, or to claim, let me say to claim, what he terms as rightfully belonging to the Ugandans, then it becomes quite absurd, and I would call it deeply dangerous.
I don't think President Museveni will want to draw
Uganda into yet another war soon. And of course, this time now, an international war away from the internal conflicts in Uganda. And I think Ugandans are also aware of this, and history has it that when Uganda waged war against Tanzania in 2 occasions, it suffered most during the War of Mutukula of around 1969-67, and then the Sabasaba War of 1977.
Security analysts read Museveni's tone as more than frustration, a reflection of landlocked nations' vulnerabilities in a region where maritime control definitely means leverage.
And therefore, the argument perhaps of the landlocked states laying claim that is going against the United Nations law of the sea is subject to rational thinking of many states which are landlocked and have a rallying call. And that is when perhaps it can define conflicts of future. So the future may not be today, it may be after a number of years that are calculated in terms of how the landlocked countries are feeling they are oppressed in terms of the existing international law.
Article 125 of United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea gives landlocked Uganda the right to access the sea and transit through Kenya, while recognizing Kenya's sovereignty over its territory. The details of the transit are agreed through bilateral or regional arrangements between the countries. However, Kenya retains the right to protect its legitimate interest as a transit state. In December 2023, Uganda took Kenya to the East African Court of Justice over restrictions that blocked its state oil company from importing fuel through Mombasa. The dispute, stemming from Uganda's dependence on Kenya for 90% of its refined petroleum, was resolved by March 2024, with the first direct shipment arriving in July last year. This highlights Kenya's role as the region's main transit hub.
The intention is not occupation, it's not taking territory. Perhaps the intention for Uganda currently is to have favorable terms of trade.
Museveni's remarks come amid ongoing tensions over cross-border resources, including Migingo Island. During his official visit on 30th July 2025, he and President William Ruto signed a fisheries and aquaculture MOU, a move aimed at sustainable management and joint capacity building, and a step toward resolving long-lasting disputes around the island. Laban Shaban, NTV.
Few days ago, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni aliclaim kwamba the Indian Ocean belongs to him, na akataka kuwepo na conversation between Uganda and Kenya ili apate a share of this ocean, na akaoni kwamba in future kunaweza tokea vita over this issue.
But that ocean belongs to me because this is my ocean. I'm entitled to that ocean. In future, we are going to have wars.
This sparked reactions among Kenyans online. But is this even possible?
At no one point in time has Uganda territory extended to the port. In fact, the limitation of boundaries put Uganda about 400 or over 800 kilometers away from the coast of Kenya. And the delimitation of boundaries, which will be held subsequent, Uganda has no basis of claim of an inch of Kenyan's territory. History has a replete stories of countries which have negotiated with coastal states to have access to the seas and are successfully using it. The only historical claim perhaps which Uganda may have on the territory of Kenya is through the discussion of what we call the Eastern Province of Uganda. But the state should also be aware that anything can happen. History has it. Uganda has made several attempts to attack Tanzania. In 1967 and 69 in the War of Mutukula, and Uganda lost.
Let's dig deeper and explain on what happened. Why is it that Ugandan Museveni thinks that he is entitled to Indian Ocean, which is owned by Kenya? Oh my God. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni said Uganda, which is landlocked, is entitled to access to Indian Ocean via Kenya coastline, which is, I think, Mombasa. He used a metaphor of a block of flats, arguing that all flows countries should have access to the compound of the ocean. He claimed that because Uganda doesn't have coastline, it's economically and strategically disadvantaged. Even if you want to build a navy, we don't have access to the sea. This is Ugandan president. Let's continue to subscribe, like, comment, and share as we continue to explain what happened, what is really happening. On the radio, he warned of future wars of this issue. Hey, why he's saying this matters. Uganda relies heavily on its neighbors like Kenya for trade, infrastructure, ports, pipelines, and rails. He argues that geographic borders in Africa are irrational and hate landlocked countries economically. He believes stronger East African integration is the solution. If he's believing in that, why is he threatening Kenya? More cooperation would make access to the sea more equitable. Why is he thinking that he's entitled and even threatening of starting a war? He also expressed frustration about 30 years of negotiation with Kenya, saying every time there is progress, Kenya's leadership changes and recess talks. Reaction. What are the reaction? As you've heard, I'm going to play more video about reaction. How is Kenya reacting? Many Kenyans have reacted with humor and satire online, poking fun at his shared ocean rhetoric. Some Kenyan commentators question his logic, for example, pointing out that Uganda already benefits from Lake Victoria and access to River Nile. So the metaphor may be flawed. Kenyan government officials have downplayed the threat of war. The Foreign Affairs Ministry said his remarks were largely metaphorical, not literal call to conflict. This is what I think. Let's continue as we continue to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Meanwhile, analysts argue that Uganda lacks the military capacity to realistically take on Kenya in maritime conflict. Uganda has no navy, and Kenya's military is stronger. Hey, we are talking about how strong and how weak the military is. Is there any war coming? We don't want any war, Kenyans and Ugandans. Museveni, please don't use the dictatorship towards the others. It doesn't work like that. Kenya's official position. Kenyan Foreign Affairs leadership, e.g. Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary Musaira Mudavadi, has said they won't block Uganda from using its port infrastructure like Mombasa for trade, not for war. However, they have not committed to giving sovereign coastal territory to Uganda or allowing Uganda to own part of the Indian Ocean. Oh my goodness. Why is a big deal? Hey, don't forget to shower your auntie with subscription and likes and comment. What do we think? This is Africa, guys. This is sensitive issue. Economic. Uganda's argument reflects its frustration at being landlocked and are dependent on other countries for international trade. Strategic. Museveni frames sea access as not just an economic issue, but also a defense one. Political, rhetorical. His strong language, even threats of war, raises tension, but also possibly plays to domestic audiences in Uganda or within the East African Africa community. Regional integration. He's pushing for deeper East African cooperation, suggesting that the solution lies in more unity rather than a conflict. This is all about this issue between Uganda and Kenya. Guys, do you believe that Museveni is entitled to make the threats? Do you think that he believes that because he's been a leader for Uganda for long time, now he can use that dictatorship to dictate other countries? Oh my God, let me know what you think. Does it work like that? Anyway, we know that Uganda is not a democratic government, so we don't blame Mr. Museveni, the president of Uganda. But at the end of the day, Africa is not ready for another war, while we are already fighting for the war in Sudan to end. Oh my God, what about the ongoing war in DRC? Now, this is Museveni who is threatening to cause another war because of the ocean. How many landlocked countries are in Africa? How are they surviving? At the end of the day, I can understand where he's coming from, but if you want people to give you favor, you don't threaten them. It doesn't matter how long it will take, but you have to plead with them. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. In summary, President Museveni call for ocean access has sparked more questions than answers. While his frustration as a landlocked nation are understandable, the idea of Kenya surrendering coast territories remains politically impossible and regionally sensitive. What this situation truly exposes is the deeper challenge within East Africa, in a region that wants integration but still struggles with trust, leadership changes, and competing nationals' interests. For now, both Kenya and Uganda insist there is no real threat of conflicts. This is what they are saying. But this debate has reminded everyone how fragile regional cooperation can be. As the conversation continues, one thing is clear: East Africa needs dialogue, not division. We don't need division. And the future of the region will depend on how leaders choose how to handle issues like this moving forward. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you abundantly. What are your opinions and your thoughts about all this saga? Do you believe that this is the right way of getting some favors? Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thank you very much to all my subscribers, both returning and new subscribers, for your ongoing support and love. Watch this video from the beginning until the end. Thank you. Have a blessed Sunday. Don't forget to subscribe once again, to like, and watch this video and comment. Ciao, bye.
Changa, God Sapasa, Boba Isa, Mark Wazanga, Kasenene, Sianu Lungu, Christine Muteya, Mungu Musano, Akana Mungu Kala, Donga Mwiza Kamona, Aketanya Longi, Familungu Yasana, Jimba Ukawami, Pembe Mahangwaha, Magafumbi Gangona, Semagwata Hamele, Katugokela Ifunda, Yagadase Milengi, Ubadase Nimeya, Ilunga Chikwete Uwa, Washina Ulaya, Mumbata wa Chipinji,